Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar. Today we're gonna talk about Form 990 and try to address some of the questions you might have.
Most organizations, except for churches, that are exempt under the Internal Revenue Code 501A must file a 990. And there are three forms of the 990. If your organization normally has gross receipts of less than $50,000, then the Form 990N is required. This is an e-postcard or an annual electronic notice that you can submit online and is available for small organizations. If your organization has normal gross receipts within the range of $50,000 and $200,000 and total assets of less than $500,000 at the end of the year, then you will need to file the short form or the Form 990EZ. Normal is defined in the 990 instructions, but usually it involves a formula of your 3-year average of your gross receipts. If your organization does not qualify under the first two categories, then your organization will need to file the full Form 990. There is an exception to this where if your organization is a 509A3 supporting organization, then you will have to file an EZ or a full Form 990, even if your gross receipts are less than $50,000. So it's important to not only know what kind of 990 to file, but to make sure to file on a timely basis, because if you fail to file for 3 consecutive years, there is an auto revocation of exempt status. So it is important to not only know what to file, but to file on time. So what does it mean to file on time? When are these 990s due? So the rule of thumb is that the 990 is due on the 15th day of the 5th month after the end of the accounting period. So for our calendar year organizations with a December year end, the original filing deadline is May 15th. Any organizations with a June year end will have a November 15th filing deadline, and so on and so forth. If you need more time to file your return, you can file for an extension. This extension needs to be filed by the original filing deadline. So if you are a calendar year organization with a May 15th filing deadline and you need more time to prepare your return, then you can file the extension by May 15th, and then that will push your filing deadline to November 15th. If you're June year end, your November deadline will then get pushed to May 15th if you file for an extension, and so on and so forth. For the 990 ends, there is no extension, but there is also no penalty for submitting it late, unless you are late for 3 consecutive years, and then you're running into auto revocation of exempt status. Late filing penalties can be assessed. So currently it is up to $105 per day or $54,500 if you're a large organization. So it is important to file your 990s on time to avoid these late filing penalties. And please also note that 990s now all must be electronically filed. If you try to paper file your 990, it will be rejected and it will not be deemed filed on time. So please make sure to e-file your returns. So organizations that have to file 990s must also publicly disclose their 990s. So what does that mean? Well, 990s are public documents. You can usually look up 990s on the IRS website or nonprofit watchdog sites like GuideStar, or maybe your organization publishes the 990s on your own website. All public charities must make their 990s available for public inspection for 3 years. So if your organization uses a tax practitioner like BPM to prepare the tax returns, BPM will generally provide a client copy of the 990 and also a public disclosure copy. Now, the difference between both these copies is that the public disclosure copy is an exact copy of the 990, but the names and addresses of the contributors on Schedule B, which we'll touch on later, the names and addresses are left off of the return because that's not public information. I'm assuming everyone here today either works for or with California-based organizations, and the California Attorney General will also publish 990s on their website. The 990s here on the AG website will also be exact copies of what's filed with the IRS, but the Schedule B will be left off altogether.
So kicking off with part 1, this is page 1 of the Form 990, and it's essentially a cover page or a summary of the contents therein. There's obviously information about your name, your address, as well as a brief description of your mission statement. This part 1 also provides information about your employees and volunteers, the number of board members that you have, and there's also summarized financial information on lines 8 through 19 here that provided on a comparative basis. And so once again, this is a cover page. It's not a linear document. So you can start with page 1 just to sort of get an idea of what's inside. Part 2 of Form 990 is the signature block. Question comes up quite often: who can sign a Form 990? The long answer is on the slide, and the short answer is any authorized officer is allowed to sign, which is arguably the most important schedule in a Form 990. It's where public charities demonstrate that they are meeting their public support requirement in order to maintain their public charity status. So part 1 of Schedule A starts with indicating why an organization is a public charity, and an organization would select between boxes 1 through 12. Public charities that are not schools or supporting orgs, for example, most often check boxes 7 and 10. And if you check either of those boxes, there's a test that needs to be completed. Both of those tests indicate that if an organization has sufficient public support, that means that they have 33 1/3 of their total support is from the general public. This fraction is determined where the numerator is the total support of an organization and the denominator is the public support. On this next slide here, you can see that this is for an organization that checks box 7, and section A is the part that is the numerator and section B is the part that is the denominator. It's a 5-year rolling average test. I'm sorry, it's a rolling test, not an average test. And also it's a complicated test. And one of the details that's important to underscore here in just an introduction is not all types of contributions count as public support. So for example, we would throw out people who give a significant amount, so that's excess contributors, as well as what are considered unusual grants. And unusual grants are support where it's unusual in nature, meaning the organization did not solicit it. If an organization does not meet the 33 1/3, it can still pass under the 10% facts and circumstances test. And that's where an organization would say, yeah, I may not have 33 1/3 support, but it is in the nature of our organization that we are publicly supported. And that's based on our facts and circumstances, such as we have an active board that is actively soliciting contributions from the public.